most and gives me the most pleasure is to see that the soul, whether she operates or suffers, is all intent on pleasing me alone, with no other end or purpose of recompense. However, what renders the soul more dear, more beautiful, more lovable, more intimate with the divine being, is her perseverance in this way of behaving, which renders her immutable with the immutable God. In fact, if today she does something and tomorrow she doesn't, if one time she has one end and another time another, if today she tries to please God and tomorrow creatures, she is the image of one who today is queen and tomorrow a most miserable servant. Today she nourishes herself with delicious foods, tomorrow with filth. After a little while he disappeared, but a little later he came back, adding, "The sun is there for the benefit of all, but not everyone enjoys its beneficial effects." In the same way, the divine sun gives its light to all, but who enjoys its beneficial effects? One who keeps his eyes open to the light of truth. All others, even if they are exposed to the sun, remain in the dark. However, it is one who is all intent on pleasing me that truly enjoys and receives all the fullness of this sun. June 30, 1903. The Most Holy Virgin teaches the soul how to keep her interior gaze fixed on Jesus. The beauty of the interior soul. As I was outside of myself, I saw the Queen Mother, and prostrating myself at her feet, I said to her, "My most sweet Mother, in what terrible constraints I find myself, deprived of my only good and of my very life. I feel I am touching the extremes." While saying this, I was crying, and the Most Holy Virgin, opening herself at the place of her heart, as if she were opening a tabernacle, took the baby from within it and gave him to me, telling me, "My daughter, do not cry. Here is your good, your life, your all. Take him and keep him always with you, and as you keep him with you, keep your interior gaze fixed on him. Do not be embarrassed if he does not tell you anything, or if you are unable to say anything. Just look at him in your interior, and by looking at him you will comprehend everything, you will do everything, and you will satisfy for all." This is the beauty of the interior soul. Without voice, without education, since there is no external thing that attracts her or upsets her, but all of her attraction, all of her goods are enclosed in her interior. By simply looking at Jesus she easily comprehends everything and does everything. In this way, you will walk up to the top of Calvary, and once we reach it, you will no longer see him as a baby, but crucified, and you will remain crucified together with him. So it seemed that, with the baby in my arms and together with the Most Holy Virgin, we walked the way of Calvary. While walking, at times I would find someone who wanted to take Jesus away from me, and I would call the Queen Mother to my help, saying to her, "My Mama, help me, for they want to snatch Jesus away from me," and she would answer me, "Do not fear, your care must be in keeping your interior gaze fixed on him. This has so much power, that all other powers, human and diabolical, remain debilitated and defeated." Now, while we were walking, we found a temple in which Holy Mass was being celebrated. At the time of Holy Communion I flew to the altar with the baby in my arms in order to receive communion. But what was not my surprise when, as soon as Jesus Christ entered into me, he disappeared from my arms. Then, after a little while, I found myself inside myself. July 3, 1903. If the soul gives herself completely to Jesus in life, Jesus gives himself to her at her death and exempts her from purgatory. This morning, as I was very afflicted because of the loss of my adorable Jesus, all of a sudden he made himself seen in my interior, filling my person completely. That is, my head, my arms, and all the rest. As I was seeing this, almost wanting to explain to me the meaning of the way he was making himself seen, he told me, "My daughter, why do you afflict yourself if I am the master of all of you? When a soul comes to rendering me the master of her mind, of her arms, of her heart and of her feet, sin cannot reign, and if something involuntary enters into her, since I am the master and the soul is under the influence of my lordship, she is in continuous seven attitude of purgation, and that something immediately goes out of her. Furthermore, since I am holy, it is difficult for her to retain within herself anything which is not holy. Even more, since she has given all of herself to me in life, it is justice that I give all of myself to her at her death, admitting her to the beatific vision without delay. So, if one gives herself completely to me, the flames of purgatory have nothing to do with her. August 3, 1903. The more the soul strips herself of natural things, the more of supernatural and divine things she acquires. As I was in my usual state, my adorable Jesus came for just a little, making me hear his most sweet voice saying, "The more the soul strips herself of natural things, the more of supernatural and divine things she acquires. The more she strips herself of the love of self, the more of the love of God she acquires, the less she tires herself in knowing human sciences, in enjoying the pleasures of life, the more knowledge she acquires of the things of heaven, of virtue, and the more she will enjoy them, as the bitter ones will convert into sweet. In sum, these are all things that proceed at the same rate, in such a way that, if one feels nothing of the supernatural, if the love of God is extinguished in the soul, if one knows nothing about virtues and the things of heaven, and finds no pleasure in them, then he knows reason very well." October 2, 1903. One who is united with Jesus grows in his very life, gives development to the graft he made in redemption, and adds more branches to the tree of his humanity. The interior and the exterior souls. As I was in my usual state, all embittered and afflicted, and almost dazed because of the privation of my adorable Jesus, not knowing myself where I was, whether in hell or on earth. I just barely saw him like a flash that escapes, saying, "One who is on the path of virtues is in my very life, and one who is on the path of vice is in contradiction with me." And he disappeared. A little later, in another flash, he added, "My incarnation grafted humanity to the divinity, and if one tries to remain united with me with his will, with his works and with his heart, trying to carry out his life according to the standard of mine, it can be said that he grows in my very life and gives development to the graft made by me, adding more branches to the tree of my humanity. If, on the other hand, he does not unite with me, in addition to not growing in me, he gives no development to the graft, but rather, since one who is not with me cannot have life, with perdition the graft is undone." And he disappeared again. After this, I found myself outside of myself, inside a garden in which there were several rose bushes, some nicely bloomed, in the right proportion, almost half closed, and others with petals falling off, to the point that a slight movement was enough to prune them, leaving just the stem of the rose naked. A young man, I don't know who he was, said to me, "The first roses are the interior souls, who operate in their interior. These souls are symbolized by the rose petals which are turned inwards, adding a distinction of beauty, of freshness and of solidity, with no fear that some petals may fall to the ground. The external petals symbolize the blooming that the interior soul does outwards, receiving life from within her. Her works are fragrant with holy charity and, almost like lights, they strike the eyes of God and of her neighbor. The second rose bushes are the exterior souls. The little good that they do is all external and in the sight of everyone. Since there is no interior blooming, there cannot be the aim for God alone and his love alone, and because this is lacking, the petals, that is, the virtues, cannot be well attached. So, as the light breath of pride comes, it makes the petals fall off, as the breaths of complacency, of love of self, of esteem of others, of contradictions, of mortification come, They just barely touch the rose, and the petals fall down to the ground. So, poor rose, it remains always naked, without petals, with only thorns left, which prick its conscience. After this, I found myself inside myself. October 3, 1903. Jesus continues his life in the world, not only in the most holy sacrament, but also in the souls who are in his grace. I was thinking about the hour of the Passion in which Jesus took leave of his mother to go to his death, and they blessed each other, and I was offering this hour to repair for those who do not bless the Lord in everything, but rather, they offend him. In order to impetrate all the blessings which are necessary for us to preserve ourselves in the grace of God, and to fill the void of the glory of God, as if all creatures were blessing him. While doing this, I felt him move in my interior, saying, "My daughter." In the act of blessing my mother, I also intended to bless each creature individually, and all in general, in such a way that everything is blessed by me: thoughts, words, heartbeats, steps and movements made for me. Everything has been given value by my blessing. Even more, I tell you that everything good that creatures do, was all done by my humanity, so that all the works of creatures might first be divinized by me. Furthermore, my life, real and true, still continues in the world, not only in the most holy sacrament, but in the souls who are in my grace. And since the capacity of the creature is very limited, and one of them alone is unable to grab everything I did, I act in such a way as to continue my reparation in one soul, praise in another, thanksgiving in another, in some others my zeal for the salvation of souls, in another my sufferings, and so with all the rest. According to how they correspond to me, I carry out my life within them. Therefore, think of what constraints and pains they put me into. While I want to operate in them, they do not pay attention to me. Having said this, he disappeared, and I found myself inside myself. October 7, 1903. The victim souls are human angels who must repair, impetrate, protect humanity. I had asked the confessor to leave me in the will of our Lord, withdrawing the obedience that, whether he wanted or not, I should continue to remain in this state of victim. At first he did not want it, but then he consented, as long as I would assume the responsibility of answering before Jesus Christ for what could happen in the world, and he said that I should think about it first, and then answer him. I wanted to tell him that I did not want to oppose the divine will. Only, if the Lord wants it, I want it. If he does not want it, I do not want it. So, why this responsibility? And he, think about it first, and tomorrow you will answer. So, as I was thinking about it in my interior, he told me, justice wants it, love does not. Then, finding myself in my usual state, I saw him for just a little, and he told me, the angels, whether they obtain something or not, always do their office. They do not withdraw from the work entrusted to them by God, of the custody of souls. Even if they see that, almost in spite of their continuous cares, diligences, industries and assistances, souls are miserably lost, they are always there, at their places. Nor do they give greater or lesser glory to God if they obtain or do not obtain, because their will is always stable in carrying out the work entrusted to them. The victim souls are human angels who must repair, impetrate, protect humanity, and whether they obtain or do not obtain, they must not cease their work, unless they were assured about it from on high. October 12, 1903. Meanings of the crowning of thorns. This morning I saw my adorable Jesus in my interior, crowned with thorns, and in seeing him in that state I said to him, "My sweet Lord, why did your head envy your scourged body which had suffered so much and had shed so much blood? And as your head did not want to be outdone by your body, which had been honored with the frieze of suffering, you yourself incite your enemies to crown you with such a painful and tormenting crown of thorns?" And Jesus, "My daughter, this crowning of thorns contains many meanings, and as much as I may speak, there is always much left to be said. In fact, the reason why my head wanted to be honored by having, not a general share, but its distinct and special portion of suffering, and its own shedding of blood, almost competing with the body, is almost incomprehensible to the created mind. The reason is that it is the head that unites the whole body and all of the soul, in such a way that, without the head, the body is nothing. So much so, that one can live without the other members, but it is impossible to live without the head, because it is the essential part of the whole of man. In fact, if the body sins or does good, it is the head that directs it, since the body is nothing other than an instrument. Therefore, since my head was to give back regime and dominion to men, and earn for them that new heavens of graces and new worlds of truths might enter the human minds, rejecting the new hells of sins because of which men reach the point of rendering themselves vile slaves of vile passions, wanting to crown the whole human family with glory, with honor and with decorum. I wanted to crown and honor my humanity first, though with a most painful crown of thorns, symbol of the immortal crown which I was giving back to creatures, taken away from sin. In addition, the crown of thorns means that there is no glory and honor without thorns, that there can never be dominion over passions and acquisition of virtues without feeling oneself being pricked deep in one's flesh and spirit, and that true reigning is in mastering oneself by the pricks of mortification and of sacrifice. Moreover, these thorns signified that I am the true and only king, and only one who constitutes me king of her heart enjoys peace and happiness, and I constitute her queen of my own kingdom. So, all those rivulets of blood which poured from my head were many little streams which bound the human intelligence to the knowledge of my sovereignty over them. But who can say all that I feel in my interior? I do not have the words to express it. Even more, the little I have said, it seems to me I have said without connection, and I believe that it must be so in speaking about the things of God, as high and sublime as is the way in which one speaks, since He is uncreated and we are created, one cannot speak about God but in stammering. October 16, 1903. The divine will is light, and one who does it nourishes himself with light. As I was in my usual state, I was feeling all full of sins and of bitterness. Then He made Himself seen like a flash in my interior, and I saw my adorable Jesus for just a little. However, in His presence, the sins disappeared. Concerned, I said, "My Lord, how is it that while in your presence I should know my sins better, it happens the opposite?" And He, "My daughter, my presence is sea with no boundaries, and one who is in my presence is like a little drop. Whether it is black or white, it dissolves in my sea. So, how can it be recognized any more? Moreover, my divine touch purges everything, and the black ones it turns into white. How can you fear then? Furthermore, my will is light, and by always doing my will, you nourish yourself with light, and your mortifications, privations and sufferings convert into nourishment of light for the soul. In fact, the only food which is nourishing and gives true life, is my will. And don't you know that this continuous nourishing herself with light, even if the soul should contract some defects, purges her continuously? Having said this, he disappeared. October 18, 1903. Sin is an act of the human will opposite to the divine. True love is to live in the will of the beloved. Continuing in my usual state, I saw my adorable Jesus for short instants, and He told me, "My daughter, do you know what forms sin? An act of the human will opposite to the divine. Imagine two friends who are in opposition. If the thing is light, you would say that their friendship is not perfect and loyal. Be it even in little things, how can they love and yet oppose each other? True love is to live in the will of the other, even at the cost of sacrifice. If then the thing is grave, not only are they not friends, but they are fierce enemies. Such is sin. Opposing the divine will is the same as making God one's enemy. Be it even in little things, it is always the creature that puts herself in opposition to the Creator. October 24, 1903. An image of the Church. As I told the confessor about my concerns that my state may not be will of God, and that, at least as a test, I wanted to try to make an effort to go out of it and see whether I could manage or not, without raising his usual difficulties, the confessor said, "All right, tomorrow you will try." So I was left as if I had been freed of an enormous weight. Now, after he celebrated Holy Mass and I received communion, I saw my adorable Jesus in my interior for just a little, his gaze fixed on me, his hands joined, in the act of asking for pity and help. At that moment I found myself outside of myself, inside a room in which there was a lady, majestic and venerable, but gravely infirm. She was inside a bed with a headboard so high as to almost touch the vault, and I was forced to stay over this headboard, in the arms of a priest, in order to keep it still and to look at the poor ill one. While in this position, I saw a few religious surrounding and offering their cares to the patient, and saying among themselves with intense bitterness, "She is ill, she is ill, it would take nothing more than a little shake."